And today I'm going to show you what I was talking about with the grid to draw back the design onto the paper. And so I've gone ahead and I've completed that. I've done it very lightly because I don't want to have it show through the painting. What I do when I'm doing the grid, whether it be for a flower or it be a portrait, I have gone ahead and taken just a plastic sheet that you would put your photographs in and then put it into a larger book, and I put the graph lines on it, so then I can slide in any photograph I want to into this grid, and then the grid stays right on the plastic paper. So I'm not marking up my photographs all the time, which works out really, really nice. So what I did was I put the photograph reference of the Tiger Lily that we're painting, and I took the ruler, which is the same ruler I put the grid on, and the first try I did, I messed up, so I had to erase those grid lines. Not that big a deal. Watercolor paper, Arches watercolor paper is very good. So what I did then after I erased it is I picked out an anchor point, and I chose right here because it's right in the middle, because we don't have to put the lines all the way across, just where we're going to need to put in the other separate lines. Don't forget, this was completely white. It was just all the paper. So I picked out an anchor point here and here, and I started there. And I put those lines in that way. So I continued this petal down here. I continued this petal down here. I could see where the background was, so I went around that petal that way. And that's how I completed it. And I'm happy I did that because I think I got the stamen down here much better than even the drawing that I had. So I was very happy that with the way that this turned out. So, and where I learned how to do that, I'm a self-taught artist. I do a lot of reading, try to take as many classes as I can, but unfortunately now after COVID, you're not seeing a lot of classes or conventions of any sort. So this is a book that I actually just went on eBay. It's a used book. It's an older book, but it still is very valid. I'm just trying to see when it was reprinted in 2019. First printing was 2018. But it's a very valid book. And this is Giovanni Chiavardi, and he's got one for adults, older people, babies. So he's a very avid artist. And as you can see in his book, he gives you a graphite of his line drawing, how the drawing turned out down here, and then also how he started out. So he's really, really good. I think he's from Italy. But so that's how I learned how to use the grid. There were some other people that suggested using the grid, and I just kind of balked at it. I know Lee Hammond is a very good drawer and sketcher, and she does colored pencils. She also does watercolors. So she would be another one. I've got a couple of her books, and she will use a grid at times as well. So I've got my lines drawn back in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the grid lines because we don't need those, and I don't want to take a chance on those showing through. Should be good. Now, first thing we're going to do is a wet and wet. So I'm going to take my water with my clean water brush and add in water so I can do my wet on wet. First thing we're going to do is put down a very light value all over the entire petal. And then we'll put in our mid value. And then our dark. If we have enough time, we should. And we're going to want to pull out any highlights. Now this one, it does have a couple highlights right in here. So we're going to pull out those highlights. And I've always said that putting your water on your petal is as important as putting your paint on that petal. So you always want to make sure that it's completely covered. I always, when it's the first time I'm putting water onto a surface for a wet-on-wet technique, I'm always going to put down a double water, unless I'm just going to pull it out and do a wet on dry, but totally different technique. Okay, so I'm going to lift this up. I can see a couple places I missed. If you lift it up to the light, you can tell if you've gotten that petal completely covered. And if you're good in the corners, like you want to be. That looks pretty good. I'll leave that. Oh, right down the edge, make sure I got it right up to the edge of this petal. Now I'm going to let that set for a minute, and then I'm going to put in another coat of the water. Now, you always want to put your petal or your brush down where the petal is the darkest. Actually, right in here is where the petal is the darkest. So that's where I'm going to put my brush down first, is right in this area. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my second layer of water. This Arches paper, which is a 140-pound cold press, really absorbs quite a bit of water, so you want to, and I am not in a hot climate whatsoever. I'm in Wisconsin, so we are definitely not a hot climate. And of course I went off a little bit, so I'm just going to take that water off of there. I don't want it to run into the next petal or the background. So that looks good. Okay, so I've got that in there. Now I'm going to pick up my number 4, which I would consider that to be again, these are Billy Shoals brushes, so I would consider that to be a 6. If you're using like a, what's the name brand? Velvet Touch, which is a good brush, I use those too. A number 6 would be this size number 4. So I'm going to pick up my lightest value on my brush. I'm going to pull it to a point. I'm just going to drop it in where I want that paint to be its darkest, which is in this corner. Refilling my brush. I don't want it to be streaky, so I'm just going over those streaks. This comes out pretty much all the way out here. It's darker. Making sure the color goes right up to my edge. put more value down here where I want it. And again, this is going to go over the entire leaf or petal as the first value. And then we'll go darker and then darker again. It's going to be really pretty. With that darker background, it's going to make this flower just pop off the page, which is what exactly I wanted to accomplish with this design. If you've had a moment to take a look at my Etsy store with all my classes on it, thank you. I think you'll be happy to see. I did just add the cardinal to it. This, then I also have a white rose that I'll be adding to it. And I've got some other paintings that I'm going to put on there that I did not do video for, that'll be for sale, just the finished pieces by themselves. Making sure I'm getting right up to the corners. Okay, now let's go to our next value up, and we're going to decide where this goes. It looks to me like it goes right up the center here. Let me make sure you can see me. So it's darker in here, and it actually starts and comes up like this. So we're going to, I do have a line in there, so that'll be easy for me to follow. And we're just going to let the water in there blend these two colors together. Picking up more paint, bringing my brush to a point. And this is just the very beginning of this painting, so if you're not happy with it, don't worry. It's going to be quite a bit different by the time you're done. This is just a base, basically. Now right in here, too, is darker. And as we add in this second color, if that first value just stopped at a certain spot, you wouldn't want to cover the entire first value. But since it covered the entire petal here, we don't really have to worry about that too much. And watercolors do dry lighter. So we'll be building up the value on this to make sure it's a red-orange color. Keep within the color scheme. Keep going over this edge down here, and I don't want to do that. Just picking up that value and then going back over it to soften it in. Okay, there's our next value. Now, the last value we want to put in, and we want to do this fairly quickly just because we want to be able to pick up those highlights. I'm just going to re-darken, and we don't again want to cover the entire mid-value color. So I'm just going over this center. We're going to go up like this. See already how you're getting the 3 values in there, how much more realistic this petal looks already. The values is what gives you realism. Otherwise you would have a flat petal. Okay, now cleaning my brush, wiping it off on my cloth, making sure I have no drips on here, and I'm going to go in and pick up our highlights. You want to wipe it off on your cloth in between, because otherwise all you're doing is reapplying what you just took off. But you want your brush to be drier than the paper, or all you're going to be doing is adding water or whatever you have in your brush back in, and you do not want to do that. So now I've got a highlight over here I want to take out. Clean my brush periodically. And sometimes you have to go back in and do this 2, 3, 4 times just to get those highlights the way you want them. But now is the best time to remove those highlights out of that paint, because you don't want to have to use an eradicator on all these highlights. That's harsh to the paper. I'll make sure I get this edge, because that's what's going to make that pop, and separate this from the top part. That's better. And sometimes it just needs to dry a little bit to get that moisture to the right level where you can lift this paint the way you want to. So there, we've got those done. I'm going to just let that one dry next time I want to mix something. So we're going to pick up our mid value, and that's going to be our background. Darkest. Dropping it in. Make sure you can see me, and it looks like you can. Letting the water do its thing. Alright, got that one in. Now I want to make sure I get this right down the center on this one. Perfect. See how it's separated out those stamen? It's exactly what we needed. Stamen are going to be lighter. Probably going to be more of an orange value to them. This is kind of a fun color scheme. So you can go more blue, you can go more green, go more red, go more orange. So you got some choices here. Which is fun. Alright. Just making sure we got it right up to the edge where we want it. And it looks like we do there. But putting that graph on there really gave me a better understanding of where those stamen were. So it might be something you want to play with. I would definitely recommend trying it. I know I fought it at first because I thought, oh, what a pain. Lots of work. Well, it is, but you know what? If it improves your work, it's definitely worth it. Okay, so we've got the first value in there. Now, the next value, darkest area, is going to be right in here, right up here, right down here. Right up next to those stamen. It's going to be nice and dark. And right in here. There's not going to be any highlights to pull out on this one, so we're good there. Don't have to worry about that. I guess maybe there is one right through here on the edge. Now I'm going to clean my brush and we're going to pick up the darkest value, which is darker than what we've been using. Get it right into those corners. Right in there. And you don't want to cover up your mid value completely, but you do want to get this value in there. It's going to give you the depth that you're looking for. Okay, now I can see a highlight right there, right around that edge. So, clean my brush really well. Wipe off any water drips. Paper's still pretty wet here, so I'm going to take a few more strokes, but that's okay. It'll be fun to put in those dots on this Tiger Lily too. Some are darker than others, some are lighter than some are bigger, some are smaller, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, we got that edge done. Alright, I'm going to dry this real quickly. We got 3 main petals done. Then we can go back in and do this guy and this guy and this guy. That's this one and right in here between these 2 petals.